Hi, and welcome to Unit 7 this week. I'm going to begin by bowing. I'm glad you're here. Last week we looked at space and emptiness as characteristics of the threshold phase. And this week we continue our exploration of the threshold phase and look at a set of other concepts that bear on this time. The connections may not be immediately obvious, so I thought I would just say a little bit about the terms and the concepts that are coming up this week. I think both space and emptiness, space and disintegration, are ways to understand the necessity of the threshold phase. If you remember back to the beginning of the semester, we talked about two kinds of transitions, those that are linear and those that are transformative. Linear transitions do involve a change, though it's not really a major change in the direction of one's life. But transformation involves a major rewrite of the narrative of our lives. Another way to see it is that linear transition propels us faster or farther than we had been before, but not in necessarily a new direction. And it doesn't require the same depth of ego disintegration, the same depth of change in our self-images, our relationships with others, our relationships with the world. The transformative changes, however, the transformative transitions do involve that kind of deep disintegration, really, and I mean that literally, the lack of an integration of the pieces of our lives. The pieces may still be there, but following a transformation, a transformative transition, those pieces have a different relationship to each other. So remember that the transformative transitions involve some kind of a breakdown. And this gives it a similarity to spiritual emergency, a breakdown in the service of transformation, in the service of radical, deep growth. So the disintegration requires a change in letting go of outmoded ways of being. Letting go of old ways of being, a death of the ego, that is, a kind of ego death in preparation for rebirth. And I guess we could say death also starts with a D, which is a small joke that hopefully you'll get after reading the study materials this week. The emptiness of the threshold time has been likened to a dark night of the soul. And the dark night of the soul invokes the qualities of despair and disillusionment and disengagement, the loss and existential emptiness of the threshold phase. That's part of it. But I think the dark night of the soul as an image evokes something else too. You'll see in the study materials a quote from F. Scott Fitzgerald, who said that in a real dark night of the soul, it's always 3 o'clock in the morning. Now, I think he probably was referring to it in the sense of despair and disillusionment and that existential emptiness. But I don't know about for you. For me, 3 o'clock in the morning is also one of the most intimate times that I know. The dark night of the soul, according to some interpretations, is not so much about the suffering of existential emptiness, but rather a kind of mystical poverty. That's a term that comes from the Christian contemplatives. Rumi, the Sufi poet, spoke of having nothing and wanting nothing. That is, having nothing, but no sense that there's something missing. Just the purity, the openness, the stillness, the mystery, the dark. So here we see two different senses of the dark night of the soul. One despairing and the other quite intimate with God, with the divine, with the archetypes, with the whole. So quite a transpersonal sort of place, this dark night of the soul. So maybe this week we could look at both of these senses as a still time, a mysterious time, precious, intimate time. And this time calls for a certain kind of power. There's power in that intimacy, power in that emptiness. And it's not the power to do as much as it's the power to be. The power to be present with experience, regardless of how it feels, regardless of where it goes. I dare say that all the spiritual traditions have emphasized not so much the power to do, but the power to be. Maybe this is why so many threshold rituals involve some kind of a vigil, staying up all night, some encounter of the dark. Certainly the threshold time is a time when we encounter the liminal. That's the liminal that is beyond our boundaries, beyond our borders, beyond our familiar world. And this dark night of the soul may be exactly that, a way of capturing this sense of liminality in the threshold phase. So I'm struck by really how much there is to explore in this phase. This could easily be a whole course. It could easily be a lifetime of study. So I hope that the material this week sparks you in a way that not only stirs you and bears fruit this week, but stirs you and bears fruit for a long time after. So, advice I give to many of the people setting off on a wilderness solo: dig deep. And I'd like to pass that advice on to you this week. Dig deep. I look forward to seeing you online, and I'll bow.